Everybody needs to know this. The information regarding the operation in Yemen was leaked. A fucking journalist was added to a Signal conversation by top officials, including Vance, Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, and multiple other people that were discussing our national secrets via Signal. How in the fuck is this not all over the FYP? If this is not news now, it is going to be news very fucking soon. Trump's administration broke national security protocol by accidentally including renowned Atlantic reporter Jeff Goldberg in this particular Signal conversation. Yes, they were using Signal to talk about national security issues. Yeah, there was fucking no skiff. Honestly, their phones could have been dropped at any time, and our national secrets could have been released to anybody. Specifically involving the bombing of Yemen. I honestly have no idea how to break this down simple to anybody, so I'm just going to go ahead and fucking read it because it's really fucking detailed, so press and hold for 2 times speed. On Tuesday, March 11th, I received connection request on Signal from a user identified as Michael Waltz. Everybody knows what Signal is. I assumed that Michael Waltz in question was President Donald Trump's national security advisor. I did not assume, however, that it was a request from the actual Michael Waltz. I have met him in the past, and though I didn't find it particularly strange that he might be reaching out to me, I did think it was somewhat unusual given the Trump administration's conscientious relationship with journalists and Trump's periodic fixation on me specifically. It immediately crossed my mind that someone could be masquerading as Waltz in order to somehow entrap me. It is not at all uncommon these days for nefarious actors to try and induce journalism to share information that could be used against them. He did accept the Signal request, and 2 days later, Thursday, at 4:28 p.m., he received a notice that he was to be included in a Signal group. The chat was called Houthi PC Small Group. Not even any fucking code names. Holy shit. The message in the group from Michael Waltz reads as follows. Team establishing a principals group for coordination on Houthis, particularly over the next 72 hours. My deputy, Alex Wong, is pulling together a Tiger team at deputy agency chief of staff level, following up from the meeting in the sit room this morning for action items, and we'll be sending that out later this evening. The message continued, please provide the best staff POC from our team for us to coordinate with over the next couple of days and over the weekend. And then he goes on to say that the term principal committee generally refers to senior-most national security officials, state, defense, treasury, as well as the head of the CIA. So in here, we've got Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, Andy Baker, Tulsi Gabbard, Joe Kent. Now keep in mind, this is a Signal group that he joined on the 11th. This is actually going to share all of the intelligence that he's received over the last almost 2 weeks. So he sat there quiet, didn't respond. I don't know if they didn't know that he was there, if someone purposely invited him, mistakenly invited him, but he just kind of sat there ghost-like, and he purposely didn't exit because then it would say that he had exited and people would be like, oh my gosh. He doubted that it was real, but he still sat there because he could not believe that the national security leadership of the United States would communicate on Signal about imminent war plans. He also could not believe the national security advisor to the president would be so reckless as to include the editor-in-chief of the Atlantic in such discussions with senior U.S. officials to set up including the vice president. The next day, things got even stranger. At 8:05 a.m. on Friday, March 14th, Michael Waltz texted the group, team, you should have a statement of conclusion with tasking per the president guidance this morning with your high inboxes. High side in government parlance refers to classified computer communication system. State DoD, we developed suggested notification list for regional allies and partners. Let's see, more specific sequence and events coming in the days in the DoD to ensure COS, OVP, and POTUS are briefed. So he knew about this. Trump knew about this. Still on March 14th, J.D. Vance responded, team, I am out for the day doing an economic event in Michigan. I think we are making a mistake. Vance was indeed in Michigan that day. The Vance account goes on to state 3% of U.S. trade runs through the Suez. 40% of European trade does. There is a real risk that the public doesn't understand this or why it's necessary. Its strongest reason to do this is, as POTUS said, to send a message. It's truly insane how many leaks have happened over the past freaking 30 hours. It just blows my mind how much is leaked over the past 30 hours. Anyway, Vance goes on to say, I'm not sure the president is aware of how inconsistent this is with the messaging in Europe right now. It's further risk that we are going to see moderate to severe spike in oil prices. I'm willing to support the consensus of the team and keep the concerns to myself, but there is strong argument for delaying this a month, doing the messaging work on why this matters and seeing where the economy is, etc. Supposedly, Joe Kent character goes on to say that at 8:22 that same day, there's nothing time-sensitive driving the timeline. We'll have the exact same time options in a week. Then at 8:26, a message landed in my Signal app from user John Radcliffe. The message contained information that might be interpreted as related to actual current intelligence operations. 8:27, P. Hegseth says, VP, I understand your concerns and fully support you raising with POTUS the important considerations, most of which are tough to know how they play out. Economy, Ukraine, peace, Gaza, etc. I think messaging is going to be tough no matter what. Nobody knows who the Houthis are, which is why we need to stay focused on Biden failed and Iran funded. The inner workings of them fucking our minds. Hegseth says, waiting a few weeks or months does not fundamentally change calculus. Immediate risks on waiting are, if this leaks, we look indecisive. Israel takes action first or Gaza ceasefire falls apart. And we don't get to start this on our own terms. We can manage both. We are prepared to execute. And if I had final go or no-go vote, I believe we should. This is not about the Houthis. I see it as two things. Restoring freedom of navigation, a core national interest, and 2, reestablish deterrence, which Biden created. But we can easily pause. And if we do, I will do all I can to enforce 100% operation security. I welcome other thoughts. Sunday the 15th at 11:44 a.m., Hegseth posted team update. Jeff's not going to say what included. He says that the information contained in them, if they had been read by an adversary of the United States, could conceivably have been used to harm American military and intelligence personnel, particularly in the border Middle East, Central Command's area of responsibility. He says, what I will say, in order to illustrate the shocking recklessness of this signal conversation, is that Hegseth post contained operational details of forthcoming strikes on Yemen, including information about targets, weapons the U.S. could be deploying, and attack sequencing. 9 days before. We knew this 9 days before in a signal fucking message. He put our fucking troops in danger. Does anybody understand this level of idiocy? And y'all Trumpers thought that storing freaking classified documents in a fucking garage was bad. According to the lengthy Hegseth text, the first detonations in Yemen would be felt 2 hours hence at 1:45 p.m. Eastern time. So I waited in my car in a supermarket parking lot. If the signal chat was real, I reasoned Houthi targets would soon be bombed. At about 1:55, I checked X and searched Yemen. Explosions were then being heard across Sana'a, the capital city. This is a fucking real conversation. He went back to Signal 3 minutes later, and Mike Waltz had provided the group update again. He's not going to quote the exact quote there, but he does say that there were words in there that said, amazing job. A few minutes later, John Ratcliffe wrote, a good start. Not long after, Waltz responded with 3 emojis, a fist, an American flag, and a fire, presumably regarding a bomb. We got Marco Rubio putting good job, Pete Hegseth and your team, and freaking just kudos to the team, particularly those in theater and SETCOM. Really great. God bless. It's getting dark, so I took my glasses off. So anyway, there we go. There's the screenshot of the chat. On Sunday, Waltz appeared on ABC's This Week and contrasted the strikes with Biden's more administrative, more hesitant approach. These were not a kind of pinprick back and forth. What ultimately proved to be freckless attacks, he said. This was an overwhelming response that actually targeted multiple Houthi leaders and took them out. The Signal chat group was real. So then Jeff finally removed, after all of this information, he took himself out of the Signal chat group, fully aware that the group's creator was going to get a notification saying that he left. After nobody knew he was there, he was quiet the entire time, just gaining intel. And then he emailed Waltz and sent him a message on the Signal account. He also wrote Pete Hegseth, Ratcliffe, Gabbard, and other officials. In an email, he outlined some of the questions. Is the Houthi PC small group a genuine Signal chat? Did they know that I was included in this group? Was I included on purpose? If not, who did they think I was? Did anybody realize I was there when I was added or when I removed myself from the group? Do senior Trump administration officials use Signal regularly for sensitive discussion? Do officials believe that the use of such a channel could endanger American personnel? 2 hours later, he did receive an email. This appears to be an authentic message chain, and we are reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain. He just went on, the thread is a demonstration of deep and thoughtful policy coordination between senior officials. The ongoing success of the Houthi operation demonstrates that there were no threats to troops or national security. No fucking threats? If this was leaked 9 days ago, bro, are you serious? He literally goes on to make excuses, saying that the vice president's priority is to make sure that the advisors are always aware of what's going on, and Vice President Vance supports his administration's foreign policy, blah, blah, blah. There's no answers to why. Never got answers as to if they knew he was there, why he was invited to the conversation, nothing. Jeff goes on to say, I've never seen a breach quite like this. It's not uncommon for national security officials to communicate with Signal, but the app is used primarily for meeting and planning and logistical matters, not for detailed and highly confidential discussions pertaining to military action. And of course, I've never heard of an instance in which a journalist has been invited to such a discussion. So Jeff, the journalist, went on to ask Harris to consider a hypothetical scenario in which senior U.S. officials create a Signal thread for the express purpose of sharing information with other cabinet officials about an active military operation. He didn't show them the Signal messages or tell them anything about how he had obtained any of this. Didn't tell them. All of the lawyers said that the U.S. officials should not establish a Signal thread in the first place. Information about active operations would presumably fit the law's definition of national defense. The Signal app is not approved by the government for sharing classified information. The government has its own system for that purpose. If officials want to discuss military activity, they should go especially into a SCIF. All right. If you guys don't know what SCIFs are, they're protective areas where you can discuss without being bugged. He suggested that these officials were sharing information about an active military operation. They could have been moving around in public. They could have lost their phones. They could have been stolen. The potential risk to national security would have been severe. Hegseth, Ratcliffe, and cabinet-level officials presumably would have the authority to declassify information, and several of the national security lawyers noted that the hypothetical officials in the Signal chain might claim that they had declassified information they shared, but this argument rings hollow, they continued, because Signal is not an authorized venue for sharing information with such sensitive nature, regardless of whether it has been stamped top secret or not. There was another potential problem. Waltz set some of the messages in the Signal group to disappear after 1 week. That's a NARA violation. That's a violation of federal law. That's National Archive information. Under the records laws applicable to the White House and federal agencies, all government employees are prohibited from using electronic messaging applications such as Signal for official businesses unless those messages are promptly forwarded and copied to an official government account. NARA. Intentional violations of these requirements are a basis for disciplinary action. Additionally, agencies such as the Department of Defense restrict electronic messaging containing classified information to classified government networks or to networks with government-approved encrypted features. They've used Signal before, but they went on to say that it was nothing regarding national security, and that information was turned over to NARA, and NARA did confirm it. When traveling overseas, I mean, your phones could be hacked, get your sensitive information. They would get, whoever would hack it would obviously get our intelligence and would be able to read the messages on the devices. It is worth noting that Donald Trump, as a candidate for president, repeatedly and forcefully demanded that Hillary Clinton be imprisoned for using private email server for official businesses when she was a Secretary of State. It is also worth noting that Trump was indicted in 2023 for mishandling classified documents, but the charges were dropped after the election because, you know, we didn't want to set a precedent. We didn't want to send a sitting president to jail. That's precedent. Also, other cabinet level officials were already potentially violating government policy and law simply by texting one another about operation. But when Waltz added journalists, presumably by mistake, to his principals committee, he created a new security and legal issue. Now the group was transmitting information to somebody not authorized to receive it. That is classic definition of a leak, even if it was unintentional, and even if the recipient of the leak did not actually believe it was a leak until Yemen became under attack. All along, members of the Signal Group were aware of the need for secrecy in operations and security. In the text detailing aspects of the forthcoming attack on the Houthi targets, Hegseth wrote in the group, which at the time included me, "We are currently clean on OPSEC." These are federal offenses for everybody involved, including the president, because in the messaging it does state that they briefed the president. These are impeachable and prosecutable offenses for everybody. Like I said, this should be on everybody's FY fucking P.